Welcome to Ancient Relics Keeper, where forgotten civilizations, unexplained wonders, and ancient secrets come back to life. Ready to unravel the mystery? Let's begin the journey. For centuries, the Amazon rainforest was seen as a pristine wilderness, a green desert too hostile for large-scale human civilization. But new technology has peeled back the jungle canopy to reveal a shocking secret: the ruins of ancient cities, massive earthworks, and a landscape engineered by human hands. This is the story of the Amazon's forgotten masters of jungle engineering. For centuries, the Amazon rainforest has occupied a unique and powerful place in the Western imagination. It has been seen as the very definition of untouched nature, the last great wilderness on Earth, a vast primordial world teeming with exotic life but fundamentally hostile to human ambition. This perception was not just a romantic notion. It was a deeply entrenched scientific and historical paradigm. The Amazon was often referred to as a green desert, a place where the stunning biodiversity concealed a profound ecological fragility. The conventional wisdom, taught in universities and published in textbooks for decades, was that the Amazon's environment was simply incapable of supporting large-scale, complex human civilizations. The reasons seemed obvious and insurmountable. The soils were notoriously poor, thin, and acidic, quickly losing their fertility once the protective canopy of the jungle was cleared. The dense, suffocating vegetation, the torrential rains, the myriad diseases, and the dangerous wildlife all seemed to present an impenetrable barrier to the development of the kind of settled, agricultural societies that gave rise to the great civilizations of Mesoamerica, the Andes, or the Old World. This long-held belief was reinforced by the first European encounters with the region. While the very first Spanish explorers like Francisco de Orellana, who journeyed down the Amazon River in the 1540s, wrote astonishing accounts of large, populous towns, fortified settlements, and vast agricultural fields stretching for miles along the riverbanks, their stories were quickly dismissed. The explorers who followed them just a century later found nothing of the sort. They found only small, scattered, and seemingly primitive tribes living a nomadic or semi-nomadic existence. The conclusion seemed inescapable. Orellana and his contemporaries must have been exaggerating, spinning fantastical tales to impress their royal patrons back in Spain. The small mobile tribes that were encountered from the 17th century onwards, it was decided, represented the true and only way that humans could ever hope to survive in the green desert. They were seen as living fossils, a snapshot of a primitive, timeless human existence, perfectly adapted to their environment, but incapable of changing it on a grand scale. This idea of the pristine wilderness became a powerful myth, shaping conservation policies, anthropological studies, and our entire understanding of the history of the Americas. The Amazon was seen as a world without a deep history, a world that was shaped by nature alone, until the arrival of modern industry. But what if the first explorers were not lying? What if the reason the later explorers found nothing was because, in the intervening century, the civilizations Orellana had witnessed had been wiped out? European arrival in the New World brought with it not just steel and gunpowder, but also invisible killers, diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza. To these diseases, the indigenous populations of the Americas had no immunity. It is now estimated that these pandemics wiped out as much as 90% of the native population in the century after first contact. A thriving populous civilization could have been reduced to a few scattered, traumatized survivors in just a few generations. Their great towns would have been abandoned, their fields would have become overgrown, and the relentless, fast-growing jungle would have quickly reclaimed everything, swallowing all evidence of their existence in a matter of decades. The pristine wilderness that later Europeans encountered might not have been pristine at all. It may have been a recent widow, a post-apocalyptic landscape, a garden that had been abandoned by its gardeners. For centuries, this was just a counter-theory, a tantalizing what if. There was no proof. The jungle held its secrets too tightly. The first major crack in the myth of the pristine wilderness came not from a discovery deep within the jungle, but on its newly exposed fringes. Beginning in the 1970s and 80s, large-scale deforestation in the Brazilian and Bolivian Amazon, driven by cattle ranching and agriculture, began to peel back the jungle canopy on an industrial scale. As vast tracts of forests were felled and burned, something extraordinary and completely unexpected was revealed. From the air, pilots and satellite images began to show the unmistakable traces of massive, ancient earthworks etched into the cleared land. These were not the random patterns of nature. They were vast, perfectly executed geometric shapes. Enormous circles, perfect squares, and long straight causeways and ditches, some stretching for several kilometers. These incredible structures became known as the geoglyphs of the Amazon. Hundreds of these geoglyphs have now been discovered, scattered across a wide area. They are monumental in scale. Some of the circular ditches are hundreds of meters in diameter, their construction requiring the movement of thousands of tons of earth. They are often interconnected by a network of raised, perfectly straight roads or causeways. Their purpose is still a matter of intense debate. They do not appear to be villages, as there is a strange lack of domestic artifacts found within them. They also do not appear to be fortresses. Many researchers believe they were ceremonial or ritual centers, sacred spaces where large gatherings took place, perhaps for astronomical observations or religious ceremonies. But whatever their specific function, their very existence was a direct and undeniable contradiction of the old paradigm. The creation of such massive, precise, and numerous earthworks would have required a large, organized, and stable population. Small, mobile bands of hunter-gatherers could not have built them. This was the work of a sophisticated society, a society that had the manpower, the leadership, and the long-term vision to literally reshape the landscape to fit their cosmological or social blueprint. The geoglyphs were the first hard evidence, written in the language of earth and soil, that a significant, complex civilization had once thrived in these supposedly uninhabitable regions. The discovery of the geoglyphs was a revelation, but it was still limited to the areas that had been deforested. It left a tantalizing question. What else might still be hidden beneath the canopy of the remaining untouched jungle? For decades, this question remained unanswered. Traditional archaeology, which relies on finding and excavating sites on the ground, is incredibly difficult, slow, and often fruitless in the dense, trackless Amazon. But in the early 21st century, a revolutionary new technology emerged that would change everything. It was a technology that could, in effect, make the jungle itself disappear. This technology is called LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. LiDAR is a form of remote sensing that works like a highly advanced version of radar, but uses light instead of radio waves. A small plane or helicopter flies over a target area, in this case a dense patch of jungle. A device on the aircraft shoots down millions of laser pulses per second. Some of these pulses are reflected back by the top layer of the forest canopy, but many of them find tiny gaps in the leaves and branches, penetrating all the way to the forest floor before being reflected back to the sensor on the plane. By measuring the tiny differences in the return time of these laser pulses, a computer can create an incredibly detailed three-dimensional map of both the forest canopy and, more importantly, the exact topography of the ground hidden beneath it. Then comes the magic. With sophisticated software, scientists can digitally filter out all the laser points that bounced off the vegetation, effectively deforesting the landscape on a computer screen. For the first time, archaeologists could see the bare earth of the Amazon as if the entire jungle had been clear-cut, but without harming a single tree. The LiDAR revolution was a complete game-changer. Beginning in the 2010s, archaeologists began to deploy this technology over areas of the Amazon that were believed to be virgin wilderness, particularly in the Llanos de Mojos region of Bolivia and the state of Acre in Brazil, where the geoglyphs had been found. What these LiDAR surveys revealed was not just astonishing, it was world-changing. It was the archaeological equivalent of discovering a lost continent. The pristine wilderness, the green desert, was a myth. Beneath the jungle canopy, hidden from human eyes for 500 years, lay the ruins of a vast and sophisticated lost world. The LiDAR maps revealed a landscape that had been comprehensively managed and engineered by human hands. It was not a jungle with a few scattered settlements. It was a built environment, a sprawling low-density urban landscape that some have called a garden city. The images showed not just a handful of sites, but dense clusters of them, networks of settlements ranging from small hamlets to large fortified towns. These towns were often built on naturally high ground to protect them from the seasonal floods, but they were also enhanced with massive man-made earthworks. The surveys uncovered the remains of large, conical earthen mounds, some rising more than 20 meters, 65 feet high. These were clearly not natural hills. They were monumental structures, likely the bases for temples, ceremonial buildings, or the residences of an elite class. They were, in effect, earthen pyramids, requiring a colossal investment of coordinated labor to construct. Even more impressively, the LiDAR revealed the infrastructure that connected these settlements. A dense network of raised causeways, some running in perfectly straight lines for several kilometers, crisscrossed the landscape. These causeways served a dual purpose. During the dry season, they were elevated roads, allowing for easy travel and communication between the towns. But during the rainy season, when much of the region would have been inundated by massive floods, these causeways would have acted as dikes and safe, dry walkways, keeping the settlements connected and protected. The surveys also uncovered a vast and intricate system of canals and reservoirs. These were not random ditches. They were part of a sophisticated water management system, designed to control the seasonal floods, store water for the dry season, and likely, to farm fish on a massive scale. What the LiDAR had uncovered was the complete, undeniable blueprint of a lost civilization. This was not a small-scale society living in harmony with nature. This was a large-scale, technologically advanced society that was actively shaping and engineering nature to suit its needs. They had transformed the very landscape of the Amazon on a scale that was previously unimaginable. The evidence was overwhelming, and it completely overturned a century of scientific dogma. The first European explorers had not been lying or exaggerating. The great towns, the causeways, the managed fieldsit had all been real. The Amazon had indeed been home to large, complex civilizations, and the pristine wilderness was an illusion, a ghost that had grown over the ruins of a lost world. The discovery of this vanished civilization is as significant as the discovery of the Maya in Mesoamerica or the Inca in the Andes. It adds a huge, previously unknown chapter to the story of the Americas and to the story of human civilization itself. The myth of the green desert was dead. The real, far more interesting and far more complex history of the Amazon was just beginning to be told. The revolutionary LiDAR surveys that peeled back the jungle canopy did more than just shatter the myth of the pristine wilderness. They gave a name and a face to one of the most significant lost civilizations to be discovered in a century. In the Llanos de Mojos, a vast tropical savanna region in northern Bolivia characterized by dramatic seasonal flooding, the laser data revealed the breathtakingly complex world of a people archaeologists have named the Kasaraib culture. Thriving for nearly 1,000 years, from approximately 500 AD to 1400 AD, these were not a simple people living in scattered villages. They were the architects of a unique and sophisticated form of tropical urbanism, a sprawling low-density civilization built on a mastery of earth and water. The world that LiDAR uncovered is a world of monumental earthen pyramids, vast, interconnected urban centers, and an intricate network of canals and causeways that represents a feat of landscape engineering on a scale that was previously unimaginable for this part of the world. The Kasaraib civilization was not built around a single massive centralized city like a Rome or a Tenochtitlan. Instead, it was a decentralized network of settlements, a constellation of urban and suburban sites spread across the landscape, all intricately connected. The LiDAR data has so far identified at least two very large primary centers, which have been named Kotoka and Landivar. These were the major hubs of the Kasarab world. But surrounding them were at least 24 smaller secondary sites, all conforming to the same cultural and architectural pattern. This structure suggests a complex social and political organization, perhaps a confederation of allied towns or a regional kingdom with two major capitals. What is clear is that this was a planned and integrated society, not a random collection of villages. The entire region was a single coherent cultural landscape, designed and managed by its inhabitants. The primary sites of Kotoka and Landivar were the undisputed centers of power and ceremony. These were not just large villages, they were true urban centers, built with the clear and deliberate architectural vision. The core of these sites was dominated by massive monumental earthworks. The Kasarab people, living in a land without abundant stone for building, became masters of earth moving. They constructed huge, truncated, conical mounds, in essence, earthen pyramids that served as the focal point of their settlements. The main pyramid at Kotoka, for example, rises to a height of 22 meters, or about 72 feet, a colossal structure that would have dominated the flat savanna landscape for miles around. These were not just crude piles of dirt. They were carefully constructed, multi-layered platforms, often built with a specific orientation, suggesting a deep astronomical or cosmological significance. Atop these great pyramids, the Kasarab elite would have built their most important structures: temples for their gods, residences for their chiefs or priests, and public buildings from which the community was governed. To stand on the summit of one of these pyramids would have been to stand at the center of their world, with a commanding view of the entire settlement and the engineered landscape that stretched out to the horizon. The construction of these pyramids required an incredible degree of social organization and a massive investment of labor, a clear testament to the power and authority of the Kasarab leaders. Surrounding these central pyramids, the settlements were protected by a series of concentric defensive structures. The builders would dig deep, circular or polygonal moats, and use the excavated earth to build high, thick walls or ramparts. This defensive architecture suggests that while the broader region may have been politically unified, conflict was still a part of their world. These were fortified centers, designed to protect the population and the ceremonial heart of the community from outside threats. Within these defensive perimeters, the residential areas were laid out, with houses built upon raised earthen platforms to keep them dry during the annual floods. The entire settlement was a masterpiece of planning, an urban space designed for ceremony, for defense, and for a sustainable life in a challenging waterlogged environment. Perhaps the most astonishing and visually impressive feature of the Kasarab civilization, however, was its vast and intricate infrastructure of water management. The LiDAR maps revealed a landscape that was literally crisscrossed with thousands of canals, causeways, and reservoirs, all interconnected in a system of breathtaking scale and precision. The Llanos de Mojos region is defined by a dramatic hydrological cycle, a long dry season followed by a rainy season that brings massive, widespread flooding, turning the savanna into a vast inland sea. For most cultures, this would be an insurmountable obstacle to permanent settlement. But the Kasarab people did not see the flood as a threat to be feared. They saw it as a powerful force to be managed and harnessed. They were masters of hydraulic engineering. They constructed an incredible network of raised causeways, elevated earthen roads that connected their settlements to one another. These causeways were not winding country lanes. They were often perfectly straight, running for several kilometers across the landscape like grid lines on a map. They were a major feat of engineering, built high enough to remain above the water level during even the highest floods. This meant that communication, trade, and travel between the different centers of the Kasarab world could continue year-round, uninterrupted by the seasonal inundation. These causeways were the arteries of the civilization, the network that held their decentralized society together. But they were more than just roads. They also acted as dikes, controlling the flow of floodwater, and as weirs, channeling water into other parts of their system. Flanking these causeways and radiating out from the settlements was an equally impressive network of canals. These canals served multiple purposes. Some were designed to drain excess water away from the residential and agricultural areas during the flood season, protecting them from being submerged. Others were designed to capture and store the floodwater, channeling it into large artificially constructed reservoirs. This stored water could then be used for irrigation during the long dry season, a brilliant solution to the region's seasonal water scarcity. This intricate system of water management demonstrates a profound and sophisticated understanding of hydrology and a long-term vision for creating a stable and resilient environment. They did not just adapt to the rhythm of the floods, they actively controlled and manipulated it to their advantage. This mastery of water was directly linked to their ability to feed a large, sedentary population. Surrounding the urban centers, the LiDAR maps revealed vast areas of managed wetlands, a unique and highly productive agricultural system. The landscape is covered in a distinctive zigzag or herringbone pattern of low earthen walls and raised fields. This sophisticated system is believed to have served several purposes. The primary theory is that it was a form of large-scale aquaculture. The earthen walls would create a series of interconnected ponds and channels, which would be naturally stocked with fish during the annual floods. As the floodwaters receded, the fish would be trapped in these ponds, creating a massive, easily harvestable, and sustainable source of protein. Fish farming on this scale would have provided a stable and abundant food source, far more reliable than hunting or traditional agriculture alone. In addition to aquaculture, the system likely included raised field agriculture. By building up long linear mounds of earth above the flood level, the Kasarabe could create fertile, well-drained plots for growing their crops, such as maize, manioc, and squash. These raised fields would be protected from the floods, and the nutrient-rich sediment deposited by the floodwaters each year would have constantly renewed their fertility. The canals that ran between the raised fields would have provided a source of irrigation during the dry season. This combination of fish farming and raised field agriculture was a brilliantly integrated and highly sustainable system, a perfect adaptation to the challenges and opportunities of a seasonally flooded landscape. It was a system that could have easily supported the thousands of people living in the Kasarabe urban centers, and it explains how they were able to thrive in a region that was previously thought to be agriculturally poor. The world of the Kasarabe, as revealed by the incredible eye of LiDAR, is a stunning refutation of the old myths about the Amazon. This was not a world of scattered, primitive tribes. It was a world of bustling urban centers, of monumental earthen pyramids that touched the sky, and of a landscape that had been comprehensively and intelligently engineered to support a large and complex society. They were a civilization that understood the deep rhythms of their world, the sun, the seasons, and most importantly, the water, and they developed a unique and sustainable way of life in perfect harmony with those rhythms. The Kasarabe people were true masters of jungle engineering, and their magnificent, forgotten works, now rescued from the obscurity of the forest, force us to look at the Amazon not as a wilderness, but as an ancient homeland, a place of profound and enduring human achievement. The discovery of the great earthen pyramids and the vast, interconnected waterworks of the Kasarabe culture provided the undeniable proof that complex societies once flourished in the Amazon. But this discovery immediately raised a deeper and more fundamental question. How did they do it? How did these ancient peoples overcome the immense environmental challenges that for centuries were thought to make large-scale civilization impossible in this region? The answer is the profound story of human ingenuity and adaptation. The ancient Amazonians did not just survive in the jungle, they transformed it. They developed a suite of brilliant biological and social adaptations that allowed them to not only conquer their treacherous environment, but to make it thrive. They engineered the very soil beneath their feet, created a revolutionary and sustainable food system, and designed a unique form of urbanism that was perfectly suited to the rhythms of the rainforest. The first and perhaps most foundational challenge to building a large, settled civilization in the Amazon is the soil itself. Unlike the deep, rich, volcanic soils of Mesoamerica or the fertile river valleys of the Near East, most of the soil in the Amazon basin is a type known as oxisol. It is ancient, heavily weathered, acidic, and notoriously poor in nutrients. When the jungle is cleared for traditional farming, the thin layer of fertile topsoil is quickly washed away by the torrential rains, leaving behind a hard, brick-like clay that is useless for agriculture. This ecological reality was the primary argument for why large sedentary populations could never have existed here. But the ancient Amazonians had a solution, a form of advanced bioengineering that is so effective modern scientists are still studying it today. They did not just use the soil, they created it. This miraculous invention is known as terra preta do Indio, or Indian black earth. Scattered throughout the Amazon basin, archaeologists have found vast patches of this strange, dark, and incredibly fertile soil. It is starkly different from the surrounding reddish or yellow clay, and it can be several meters deep. For a long time, the origin of terra preta was a mystery, but we now know that it is not a natural phenomenon. It is a man-made or anthropogenic soil, created over centuries by the deliberate actions of the Amazon's ancient inhabitants. They developed a sophisticated recipe for soil enrichment, a form of large-scale composting. They would systematically mix low-level charcoal from slow-burning fires, known as biochar, with the rich cocktail of organic waste animal bones, fish offal, kitchen scraps, human manure, and broken pieces of pottery. The charcoal or biochar was the magic ingredient. Its porous structure acted like a sponge, holding onto water and nutrients that would otherwise be leached away by the heavy rains. More importantly, it created a perfect habitat for a rich community of beneficial microorganisms, which in turn made the nutrients in the organic waste more available to plant roots. The crushed pottery shards also helped with aeration and drainage. This was not a one-time event, it was a continuous process of soil building. Generation after generation added to these soil plots, and over centuries, they transformed the poor, infertile clay into a rich, black, carbon-sequestering soil that is among the most fertile on the planet. Some patches of terra preta created thousands of years ago are still being farmed by modern inhabitants today, a testament to their incredible stability and productivity. The creation of terra preta was a revolutionary act. It untethered the Amazonians from the limitations of their natural environment, allowing them to create permanent, highly productive agricultural zones right next to their settlements. It was a masterpiece of ecological engineering, a solution that not only fed their people but also improved the environment for the long term. This ability to engineer fertile soil was the foundation of a food system that was far more diverse, stable, and sustainable than the simple slash-and-burn agriculture practiced by many of the region's modern inhabitants. While they certainly cultivated staple crops like maize, manioc, cassava, and squash on their terra preta plots and raised fields, their food strategy was much broader. They did not just clear the forest to make way for their fields. They actively managed the forest to turn it into a source of food. This practice, known as agroforestry or creating food forests, involved selectively clearing away less useful trees and plants while encouraging the growth of species that provided food, medicine, or materials. They would cultivate large orchards of fruit and nut trees, such as the Brazil nut, the peach palm, and the cacao tree, from which we get chocolate. These managed forests would have provided a reliable and diverse source of nutrition, available year-round. They were not wild jungles. They were vast, cultivated gardens, a mosaic of managed plots and orchards that looked like a natural forest but was, in fact, a carefully designed agricultural landscape. This approach was brilliant because it worked with the natural ecosystem, not against it. It maintained the forest canopy, which protected the soil from erosion, and it preserved the biodiversity of the region while still producing a huge amount of food. In addition to their terrestrial farming, the Kasarabe culture and other Amazonian groups also became masters of aquaculture. As we've seen, their intricate network of canals, reservoirs, and zigzagging earthen walls in the flooded savannas was a perfect system for farming fish. During the annual floods, these man-made ponds would be naturally stocked with a huge variety of fish from the overflowing rivers. As the waters receded, the fish would be trapped, creating a massive, concentrated, and easily harvestable supply of protein. This system was incredibly productive and sustainable. It required no feeding of the fish and no special effort to stock the ponds. The natural flood cycle did all the work. By combining these three approaches: permanent terra preta fields, managed food forests, and large-scale aquaculture, the ancient Amazonians created a food system of incredible resilience and abundance. A system that could easily support the large populations living in their urban centers without depleting their natural resources. This unique approach to food and land management was reflected in the very structure of their society. The civilizations of the Amazon did not develop in the same way as those in other parts of the world. They did not create densely packed, centralized cities like those of the Maya or the Aztecs, where a huge population was concentrated in a small area, placing immense strain on the surrounding environment. Instead, they developed a model that has been called the garden city, or low-density urbanism. This was a brilliant social adaptation to the realities of the rainforest environment. The Kasarabe culture, for example, consisted of a network of smaller towns and settlements, all interconnected by causeways, but with large areas of managed forest, fields, and wetlands in between them. This decentralized model had several advantages. It prevented the overexploitation of resources in any single area. Each settlement had its own surrounding agricultural and foraging zones, creating a more sustainable and resilient system. It also likely created a more flexible and less rigidly hierarchical society. While there were clearly larger primary centers with monumental architecture, suggesting a degree of political authority, the overall structure was more like a confederation of allied communities rather than a single, all-powerful state ruled from a capital city. This garden city model was a perfect social blueprint for life in the Amazon. It allowed for a large total population and a high degree of social complexity, but it did so in a way that was dispersed and integrated with the natural landscape. It was a way of building a civilization that was not separate from the forest, but was woven into its very fabric. The final and perhaps most impressive adaptation was their architectural and engineering response to the defining feature of their environment: the annual flood. The Llanos de Mojos and other parts of the Amazon are subject to massive seasonal inundations that can submerge the landscape under several meters of water for months at a time. For most people, this would be an uninhabitable swamp. For the ancient Amazonians, it was simply a condition of life to be managed. Their entire civilization was architecturally designed to live with, and even profit from, the flood. They consistently built their settlements on the highest available ground, often enhancing these natural rises with man-made earthen platforms to create safe, dry islands during the flood season. The houses, the public buildings, and the great ceremonial pyramids were all elevated, keeping the core of their society above the waters. But they did not just isolate themselves on these islands. They connected them. The vast network of raised causeways was the critical infrastructure that made their civilization possible. These causeways were their all-weather road system, allowing people and goods to move freely between settlements even at the height of the flood. They were the social and economic arteries that kept the decentralized garden city functioning as an integrated whole. But the causeways and canals were also a dynamic system for controlling the water itself. They were not just passive structures, they were an active landscape-scale hydraulic machine. The causeways acted as dikes, directing the flow of floodwater away from areas they wanted to keep dry. The canals diverted this water, channeling it into their large, constructed reservoirs where it could be stored for use during the dry season. This same system also fed their aquaculture ponds, using the flood's own energy to stock their fisheries. They had created a massive integrated system that provided transportation, defense against floods, water storage for irrigation, and a sustainable food source, all at the same time. This was not a society that was hiding from the flood or merely enduring it. They were actively harnessing its immense power. They had taken the greatest challenge of their environment and turned it into their greatest asset. In every aspect of their lives, from the soil they created to the food they ate, from the structure of their society to the design of their cities, the ancient Amazonians demonstrated a profound and sophisticated ability to adapt. They were not primitive people living at the mercy of a hostile wilderness. They were brilliant engineers, ecologists, and social innovators who developed a unique and highly successful model of civilization, a model that was perfectly tailored to the complex environment of the world's largest rainforest. Their story is a powerful testament to the ingenuity of the human spirit, and a compelling reminder that there is more than one way to build a civilization. They did not conquer the jungle in the way we might think of conquest by destroying it. They conquered it by understanding it, by working with its rhythms, and by transforming it into a prosperous and enduring home. The revelation of the Amazon's lost cities, with their monumental earthworks and brilliant systems of ecological engineering, has fundamentally rewritten the history of the Americas. The LiDAR surveys have given us a breathtaking blueprint of a world we never knew existed, proving that the Amazon was once home to large, complex, and highly advanced civilizations. We can now see the scale of their achievements, we can marvel at their ingenuity, and we can understand the sophisticated strategies they used to thrive in a challenging environment. But as with all great archaeological discoveries, the answers we have found are shadowed by the even deeper questions that remain. While the technology has allowed us to see the physical footprint of this lost world, the people themselves, their beliefs, their language, their ultimate fate remain largely shrouded in mystery. The final chapter of this story is one of unanswered questions, a journey into the great enigmas that still surround these forgotten civilizations, and a reflection on the profound and urgent lessons their existence holds for our own future. The first and most personal of these mysteries is the question of identity. Despite having mapped their cities and marveled at their engineering, we know remarkably little about the Cassare people themselves, or the people who built the great geoglyphs in Brazil. We don't know what they called themselves. The name Cassarabe is a modern archaeological label, taken from the local language, not their own. Their true name, the word they would have used to define their nation or their culture, is completely lost to us. We do not know what language they spoke. The Amazon basin is one of the most linguistically diverse regions on the planet, with hundreds of different languages and language families. The language of the Cassarabe could have belonged to a known family, like the Arawak languages which are widespread in the region, or it could have been a language isolate, a unique tongue with no known relatives, its vocabulary and grammar now vanished forever. Without a written language and so far, no evidence of one has been found. We can never hear their stories in their own words. Their social and political structures also remain a matter of debate. The presence of monumental pyramids in large, fortified centers clearly indicates a degree of social hierarchy and centralized authority. There was an elite class, chiefs, priests, or nobles, who could command the immense labor required to build these structures. But what was the nature of this authority? Was it a hereditary kingship, passed down through a royal lineage? Was it a theocracy, ruled by a powerful class of priests who held the sacred knowledge of the calendar and the rituals? Or was it a more decentralized confederation of allied towns, governed by a council of elders? The garden city layout of their civilization, with its multiple centers, might suggest a more federal system rather than a single absolute monarchy. But without written records or more detailed excavations of their burials and residences, the true nature of their political world remains a matter of educated guesswork. Similarly, their religious beliefs are a mystery. The orientation of their pyramids suggests a reverence for the cardinal directions and likely an astronomical cosmology, but the details of their pantheon, their gods, their creation myths, their beliefs about the afterlife, all of this is lost. We have found the stage, but the actors and the script of their spiritual drama are gone. Perhaps the most perplexing and haunting of all the unanswered questions is the mystery of their collapse. The Khazarab culture thrived for nearly 1,000 years, a period of incredible stability and success. Their engineering was brilliant, their food system was sustainable, their society was well organized. And yet, by around 1400 AD, a full century before Columbus sailed the ocean blue, this great civilization began to decline, and eventually it vanished. Why? What happened to these masters of jungle engineering? The archaeological record offers no simple answers. There are no signs of a massive, violent conquest. There are no widespread layers of ash and destruction that would point to a devastating war that brought their world to an end. It seems, much like the great Maya cities in Mesoamerica, that the Amazonian civilizations experienced a period of decline and abandonment, their great centers slowly emptying out, their canals silting up, and their fields being reclaimed by the relentless jungle. Several theories have been proposed to explain this collapse. One of the leading hypotheses is a dramatic and prolonged climate event. The Khazarab civilization was a hydraulic society. Its entire existence was built upon the predictable rhythm of the annual flood. A major multi-decade drought, a phenomenon that we know has occurred in the Amazon's past, would have been catastrophic. It would have disrupted their entire system. The canals would have run dry, the reservoirs would have emptied, and their sophisticated aquaculture system would have failed, leading to widespread famine. A society so perfectly adapted to a wet environment may have been incredibly vulnerable to a sudden and sustained lack of water. Another possibility is that the civilization collapsed from within. After centuries of existence, social or political tensions may have boiled over. The demands of the elite class for tribute and labor may have become too great, leading to rebellions or civil wars between the different urban centers. The delicate balance of their confederation may have shattered, leading to a period of endemic conflict that destabilized the entire region and made the maintenance of their complex infrastructure impossible. A third, and equally grim, possibility is the arrival of new diseases, even before the Europeans. While the most devastating pandemics arrived with Columbus, there is evidence of long-distance trade networks connecting the Amazon with the Andes and other regions. It is possible that a disease to which the Khazarab had no immunity was introduced through these networks, sweeping through their populous centers and fatally weakening their society long before the Spanish ever set foot in the New World. It may have been a combination of all these factors, a period of drought, combined with internal conflict and the impact of disease that led to the unraveling of their complex world, forcing the survivors to abandon their great cities and adopt a more mobile, less centralized way of life, the very lifestyle that later Europeans mistook for the natural state of the Amazon. This leads us to another profound and exciting mystery. How many more lost cities are still out there? The LiDAR surveys that revealed the Khazarab culture and the geoglyphs of Brazil have so far only covered a tiny fraction of the vast Amazon basin. The Amazon rainforest is immense, covering an area nearly the size of the contiguous United States. Scientists believe that the discoveries made so far are just the tip of the iceberg. Based on the distribution of terra preta soils and the accounts of the first explorers, it is estimated that millions of people once lived in the Amazon, in a mosaic of different cultures and civilizations. There are almost certainly dozens, if not hundreds, of other major archaeological sites, other networks of towns and earthworks, still hidden beneath the jungle canopy, waiting for the all-seeing eye of LiDAR to find them. The true scale and complexity of pre-Columbian civilization in the Amazon is a mystery that is still actively unfolding. Each new survey reveals another piece of the puzzle, pushing back the frontiers of our knowledge and adding new, unknown chapters to the human story. We are in a golden age of Amazonian archaeology, a period of discovery comparable to the moment when the great Maya cities were first rediscovered in the 19th century. The full map of this lost world is still being drawn, and the potential for future discoveries is almost limitless. The Amazon is not a world without a history. It is a world whose history is only now finally beginning to be unearthed. This unfolding story is not just a historical or academic curiosity. The legacy of the ancient Amazonians holds a deep and urgent relevance for our own time. In an era when the modern world is grappling with the devastating consequences of climate change, deforestation, and unsustainable living, the story of these forgotten civilizations offers a powerful and inspiring alternative. We look at the Amazon today and see a fragile ecosystem on the brink of collapse, being destroyed by slash-and-burn agriculture, cattle ranching, and mining practices that treat the forest as an obstacle to be cleared rather than a resource to be managed. But the ancient Amazonians show us that it doesn't have to be this way. They managed to support a large, dense population in the heart of the rainforest for over 1,000 years, not by destroying the environment, but by enhancing it. Their creation of terra preta did not just feed them. It created a soil that is a massive carbon sink, locking carbon out of the atmosphere. Their practice of agroforestry did not just provide them with food, it maintained the biodiversity and the protective canopy of the forest. And their sophisticated water management system did not just protect them from floods. It used the natural energy of the ecosystem to create a sustainable and abundant source of food. They were, in the truest sense of the word, sustainable engineers. They developed a model of civilization that was deeply integrated with its environment, a model that was productive, resilient, and enduring. Their story serves as both an inspiration and a warning. It is an inspiration because it shows that it is possible for humans to live in large numbers in a tropical ecosystem without destroying it. It offers a blueprint for modern sustainable practices, from the use of biochar to enrich soils to the principles of agroforestry and aquaculture. The ancient wisdom of the Amazonians, rediscovered by modern science, may hold some of the keys to our own future survival. But their story is also a warning. It shows that even a highly sophisticated and well-adapted civilization can collapse. Whether their end came from climate change, internal conflict, or disease, their disappearance is a sobering reminder of the fragility of all human societies. The great cities they built are now ruins, their achievements forgotten for 5 centuries. Their fate reminds us that no civilization is permanent, and that the choices we make, particularly in how we interact with our environment, have consequences that can last for generations. In conclusion, the lost civilizations of the Amazon represent one of the most exciting frontiers in our exploration of the human past. The questions they leave us with are profound. Who were these people who built pyramids of earth and engineered a world of water? What did they believe? What stories did they tell? And why did their magnificent world ultimately vanish? As we continue to search for the answers, we are not just uncovering the history of a forgotten people. We are uncovering a lost part of our own human heritage, a story of ingenuity, adaptation, and resilience that challenges our most basic assumptions about progress and civilization. The Amazon, for so long considered a place without a past, is finally revealing itself to be a land with a deep, complex, and incredibly relevant history, a history that may still have much to teach us. The lost cities of the Amazon are rewriting the history of the Americas and our understanding of human potential. These forgotten civilizations prove that the rainforest was not an obstacle, but a home that could be brilliantly engineered for human life. Their story is a powerful reminder that there are still vast, undiscovered chapters of the human story buried beneath the earth. If the past still whispers to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Ancient Relics Keeper, because some mysteries were never meant to be buried.